Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday morning, 3 a.m. I hope it's a little later when you're listening to this, but thanks for being here whenever it is. Woke up, got out of bed, walked over, saw what the temperature was the other morning. It was 20 below zero here in Minocqua, Wisconsin, with a wind chill of 35 below. As you might imagine, I did not stray far from the confines of the house that day, or today for that matter. It's not much warmer. Um, According to Substack statistics, Richard Moore in depth now in 22 states, not quite a global empire, but doing what I can to help establish this wonderful network that is being established of independent journalists challenging the legacy media, the pro-government media. If you're not a paid subscriber here, I hope you consider becoming one, because that is exactly what Substack and Rumble and Locals and all these platforms that believe in free speech and believe in debate and dialogue and democracy are all about. And that is critical thinking and debate and democracy, which the pro government legacy media desperately wants to shut down, as we see by the Twitter files and all the things they've done in establishing a corporate government censorship regime. They're desperate. They're losing readers and listeners and watchers. Um, but anyway, it's been a fun ride, and it still is a fun ride here on Substack. And whether you're paid or free subscriber, thank you for being here and listening and reading. Everything is coming at you. I want to apologize. Everything is coming at you a little bunched up this week. I got tied up with interviews. We have a Supreme Court race here in Wisconsin, so I'm getting everything done, but it's sort of all bunched up at the end of the week. I still have promised and will deliver in the next couple of days a piece on tax reform. Across the country, federal government in the states, we hear everybody talking about, everybody on the conservative side at least, talking about the need for tax reform. Let's eliminate state income taxes or the federal income tax in the IRS, or let's move to a flat tax. Well, I know what the true tax reform is, he said. And believe me, I'm going to share it with you in this upcoming article. But I believe I know what the true tax reform is, and I'll get to that in that piece. Also, on Tuesday, I'm going to be posting finally the conversation I had recently with former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Daniel Kelly. That was a great conversation. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long. But even if you're not in Wisconsin, you should listen in. I'll also be posting an accompanying story with it, so you can read it if you don't want to listen. But Justice Kelly gets into, these judicial candidates, they can't address specific cases that might come before the court if he wins the election. I should explain to those who don't know, he was a former justice appointed by Governor Scott Walker. He lost his bid for election in 2020 to the liberal Jill Karofsky. He's running again, and now there are four candidates. There's another conservative candidate, Jennifer Darrow. Um, there's two liberal candidates, Everett Mitchell and Janet Protasewicz. And so it's going to be a colossal match. February 21 primary with it's a jungle primary, nonpartisan technically, but the top two vote getters on February 21st will go to an April 4th election. Very critical election. Anyway, I got backed up, but this conversation with him, even if you're not in Wisconsin, you should listen to, because he talks conceptually about constitutional issues, critical constitutional issues that are surfacing in just about every state and on the federal level. We're talking about the growth of the administrative state, due deference, what kind of due deference must and should the judiciary give to executive agencies, if any. He talks about the constitutionality of administrative law proceedings. I call them kangaroo courts, where executive agencies hold their own trials before anybody who runs afoul of those agencies can get to circuit court. He talks about what he considers, and I agree with him, he considers to be the most egregious U.S. Supreme Court decision ever. That's Kelo versus New London, deals with eminent domain. And so he just talks about a broad range of issues, including the First Amendment, and I hope everybody will tune in. I'm also going to be releasing a piece next week on criminal justice reform. Now, just a few years ago, and maybe by that I mean a decade ago, many people thought that if ever the left and right could work together, there were two areas. One was land use and zoning, the other was criminal justice reform. Because conservatives, by and large, do recognize, while we very much believe in law and order and are pro law enforcement, we do recognize that across this country we have too much incarceration. That comes with a mighty cost to families, and as conservatives, we are pro family, and it comes as a mighty cost to taxpayers. And so, 5, 10 years ago, conservatives were beginning to work with liberals. To put together what could be a unified agenda to address some of these issues. That's been blown apart because the left went wacky, and of course they've devolved into this defunding the police movement and wokeism, and so that's what they're all about, and opposing common sense things like bail reform, which we need to do. However, there's still a legitimate concern about the reforms we need in criminal justice, and I'll be writing about that next week as well. But what I want to talk about just for the next few minutes today, on Thursday morning, 3 a.m., is the Convention of the States and the possibility of the Convention of the States. And it takes 2/3 of the states to call a constitutional convention. And I believe right now, I don't quote me on this, it could be about 20 states have passed constitutional convention resolutions. These resolutions have nothing to do with the governor. A governor can't veto it, by the way. Wisconsin has passed a convention of the states resolution. So has South Carolina. So has Mississippi. So has many of the states, of the 22 states where we have subscribers. But I had a pleasure, I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to just watch Tucker Carlson's afternoon show. And on that afternoon show, and this is the show where he interviews a person for an hour or so, and he interviewed that day a guy by the name of Mark Meckler. And Mark Meckler was one of the architects, founders, activists of the Tea Party movement back in 2010. And he's moved on now. He's the head. I don't know if you call him the president or the chairman or whatever it is. He's the head of the Convention of the States movement. And he discussed the Convention of the States in great detail. If you can find that clip on Fox Nation, it's well worth it. But what I did not know, or what I did not had never had never learned about, was the history of the Convention of the States. Now, I never bought into it, so I didn't delve into it in detail. I always supported the Convention of the States. It just seems logical, without overthinking it too much, that the states and the people should be able to amend the people's constitution, after all. Um, and so I never bought into the leftist arguments that, oh, if we have a convention of the states, no telling what they're going to pass. It's going to be wacko. They could destroy the Constitution. Never mind that it would have been enabled by the Constitution and is a part of the Constitution. Oh, it's going to destroy the Constitution, destroy the country, as if the left hasn't already gone a long way toward doing that. But I never bought into it for the simple reason, and which they always conveniently omit, is that anything that comes out of a constitutional convention must still be ratified by 3/4 of the states, just as an amendment that comes out of Congress must be ratified by 3/4 of the states. So unless 3/4 of the states goes wacky, we're not going to have any wacky amendments into the Constitution. And by the way, all of, that doesn't mean we've had some wacky amendments come out of the Congress, including the Prohibition Amendment, which was repealed. We have had some wacky amendments proposed by states. Most people don't know. Here's a fun fact for the day, that back in 1949, led by the state of who else? California, even way back then, there were 6 states who passed resolutions to amend the Constitution to enable the United States of America to join in a world government. Didn't go very far, but they did get 6 states to pass resolutions for it. So the idea of the Constitutional Convention, though, was well debated and well thought out by the founders. It wasn't just something they put in willy nilly. It was something they thought would needed to be there. And so, in this whole scheme of things, when they were drafting the Constitution, there was first the Virginia plan. And their idea coming in the Virginia plan that Congress doesn't need to be a part of any part of amending the Constitution because Congress could be corrupt. Imagine that. So what we want to do is just let the states amend the Constitution. So then this gets to what was known as the Committee of Detail. And they said, nah, we really can't cut Congress out. I mean, that's the federal representatives of the people. So what they proposed was that Congress could call for a constitutional convention if 2/3 of the states requested that they do so. Now, this brought some criticism. Mainly, would Congress be obligated to call a constitutional convention if 2/3 of the states requested one? Well, it was vague, according to the Committee of Detail. And James Madison, he said, you really haven't thought this process of how this constitutional convention process would work, whether Congress would be obligated to call this convention. And so he finally said, let's just dump the Convention of the States idea completely and just let Congress propose constitutional amendments when they do so by 2/3 votes and then go to the states for ratification. Well, George Mason, he didn't like that idea. And so George Mason said, we really can't cut the states out. He said it would be improper and in fact, and as I'm going to read this quote, he didn't want Congress involved at all. He wanted to go back to the original Virginia plan. He said it would be improper to require the consent of the national legislature because they may abuse their power and refuse their consent on that very account. No amendments of the proper kind would ever be obtained by the people if the government should become oppressive. And so they settled on that 2/3 of the states, by passing resolutions in their state legislatures, could petition Congress for a constitutional convention of the states. But in the final language of the Constitution, in Article 5, of course, there's no doubting that Congress must call the Constitutional Convention. They can't just shirk it. It says it shall call the Constitutional Convention, and that's where we are today. But the founders, after much debate and much deliberation, knew that Congress could be corrupt. It could be a swamp. It could be establishment. And that the only way, as Mason said, the people would have a voice in amending their own constitution, because there might be errors in that constitution, would be if we were empower the people in the states to have a constitutional convention. And so that's how it came to be. Now, if you go to Constitution, I'm issuing a call for everybody today to go to the Constitution of the States website, Constitution Convention. Hold on now, let me get the right website here because I don't want to leave that out, but I'll get to that in a second. But it's Convention of States, excuse me, I misplaced that, conventionofstates.com. And if you go to conventionofstates.com, you can sign a petition to add your voice to the Convention of States, and then you can push a button that will send that to your legislators. And I think that that is something every one of us who are conservatives, who are concerned with liberty, ought to be able to do in pursuing any amendment to the Constitution. And certainly with some of the things going on and with the way Washington is working today, we certainly need a constitutional convention, particularly on fiscal matters, to resolve itself. So thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate your listening and being with me. Please again consider becoming a paid subscriber. Look for the things that will be coming to your inbox. Always, you're welcome to comment, and have a great, great day and have a great, great weekend. And I'll talk with you next week. Thank you.